Lyme disease. She was having it treated by a holistic herbalist who didn't know about Japanese knotweed and had it growing all around his office. And modern medicine. And she, for 2.5 years, struggling with Lyme disease. And so we did Japanese knotweed tea, and within like 2 months, she was asymptomatic. Nothing. Right? So, if you want to talk to her, she's got Japanese knotweed going right now, 3 to 5 times a day.
Wow.
Right? Because it's that time of year. But she quit it and didn't have to be on it again until she had another tick bite, and she's only doing that because she doesn't want to suffer through that again, right? So.
She was on antibiotics and knotweed.
Ooh, that's good.
Yep. Right, so for 2.5 years, nothing worked, and then Japanese knotweed in 2 months, 2.5 months later, she's asymptomatic. And that's just her. Mike has stories, I have stories, and there are our own stories. And you know what? Probably well over half of you apprentices are going to have the same type of stories, because it's that common. Lyme disease is that common. It doesn't have to be chronic.
I got it last
year.
year.
What I've seen. I'm a doctor. It doesn't have to be chronic from what I've seen.
Were you taking the Japanese knotweed before you got it? Before you had symptoms?
No. I got the symptoms, and I started taking it, and within less than a week, symptoms were gone. And then
how long did you continue after that?
I took it for a week, and then I stopped. Then the symptoms came back, and then I started taking it
for the rest
religiously
of the season.
For a month after that.
There you go.
Yeah.
And in an unrelated story, it seems like there's another plant, teasel, that is affected too. But I haven't got any experience on it yet. More pressure, I get secondaries on top of the primaries. And in this way, we can tell if a person is looking left or right, or a coyote is sniffing or alert. We can even tell their emotional state. Why do you think we've evolved as a species to be able to get meaning from text? From tracking. The ability to see characters in your head as they unfold on the page is what the trackers do. We call it spirit tracking when you're good enough, because you could anticipate the next moment before you turn the page and read it. How many of you have done that before? You know what's coming in the plot, right? This is our birthright. It's supposed to be about the living manuscript that we are characters in our own tracks. When a deer doubles back and starts to follow you, and you're tracking this deer and suddenly see a familiar footprint, it dawns on you, wow, you're leaving tracks too. Because you're looking at your own track being stalked. And you're stalking the stalker who's stalking you. It's really fun, right? And that's just on the ground. With your eyes. We're not doing eyes right now. We'll put those away. And when you hold it underwater, it shines like tinfoil. Isn't that cool? Comes out dry. Woo. Wait, I'm wet. No, I'm not. Psych. Magic. Right? Jewelweed. So, phytochemical over there, resveratrol. Phytochemical over here, lawsone. Make sense? Lawsone attaches to the receptor sites in the proteins of your skin many, many more times effectively than the usual oil from, whether it's poison ivy, poison oak, poison sumac, doesn't matter. Any of those things that cause the allergy effect that we call contact dermatitis. Neutralizes it. So we have a camp, or we have a former student who has a school for kids up north. Whole campus covered in poison ivy. And there's a jewelweed patch. They go to the jewelweed patch, they cover themselves, and they go play and roll in it. And no one gets poison ivy except for places where they missed. Pretty cool, huh? If you expose yourself to poison ivy, you can also apply it after the fact, and it'll be very effective. And once you break out, there's other plants that are much more effective, because you're addressing now the blistering and the itch. So we'll switch up the lawsone for tannic acid washes.
Is it only the root of the jewelry?
It's wherever there's that discoloration of pink, it concentrates at, this stuff's going to be this tall, and some of them as thick as my finger, with nodes, with deep purple nodes and a purple base. The highest concentration of that deepest purple is where the concentrations of that is. But because the plant is so herbaceous, just grab handfuls of it, wad it up like a loofah, and scrub to get it on you. this landscape, what is it telling you? We're tracking the human impact on a piece of land that was old growth forest 500 years ago. 300 years ago was sheep farm. The entire state was almost treeless. Okay? So not every field had sheep in them. Other fields, they were to grow the food for the sheep. And you can tell by the rock walls and what they're composed of. Some of the rock walls will be all kinds of rocks, from baseball size to gigantic ones, so that the tines, the cultivators, that are being pulled by the draft horses, those little discs, wouldn't get damaged. All the rocks go. But sheep are pretty nimble. They don't need to have every rock removed. So when you see the rock walls in the forest of just big rocks, that was a place where sheep were grazing. The age of the trees will tell you what happened here. You look at, there's a preponderance of young adolescent trees, these size trees. Go into wide angle vision and you'll see a bunch of people standing around in an open field waiting for the bus, this old. And then there's a second generation going on. And again, in wide angle vision, you'll see that these adolescents have a bunch of like kindergartners hanging out with them. Right? You see how you all see that? Interrupting that are these ancient matriarchs. Look at the size of that oak and the one, that one that fell. They're huge. They're huge and they're ancient, and they were here when this place was all fields. So we can get an idea of how long ago this place was a field by looking at and knowing the age of these oaks. Right? To do that, we have to look inside of it for its growth rates. Let's go. I looked up to make sure there wasn't a porcupine, but oh, watch out for the barbed wire. So this is a story too. This is a wound in the bark. Trees don't heal. They grow around their injuries and they become storybooks of history. What damaged the bark here? Look at its shape. Do you see that straight line? And that scar? I wonder what it could be as Gabby leans against the possibility of it being barbed wire that damaged this tree so long ago. When the bark was compromised, carpenter ants probably moved in, and then woodpeckers. Each successive year that this bark was compromised to get at the sap, because it's a maple, or a fungus got in here and rotted the heartwood, and the cavern grew until a 220-pound, 6-foot-tall guy could fit in here with his son to watch the snow. Right? I broke my neck last year. I can still do all things. But we call these wolf trees. They're actually really useful for navigating. They usually grow in a line. It's usually a property line or an old boundary. There's one here, there's one there, and over there. You can find the next wolf tree. You ready? Watch out for barbed wire on the side and on the ground. Well, anybody else want to see how these trees are used for wildlife, for denning? What do you think left it? Who was here to use that hole? I hope it's not a moose. If you know, don't say anything. You suspect. I might not disagree with you without giving you How many of you are sure, like 80% or greater, you know where you use it? Okay. Be detectives in the mystery. Know your sketch. Be careful with it though, don't inhale it. That whole plague thing, especially the 80s. Now I'm going to clean trash.
Oh, well, that gave it away.
No, I didn't tell anybody what it was. I'm saying those are dangerous cats.
Oh.
And is it just one species, one animal, or is there more? Just because there's a preponderance of sign doesn't make it the only sign. Look around the edges of the holes for hairs. I often find hairs clung to the top of these things, or where an animal might enter. The smooth area of a belly scrape that's repetitive could give you some hairs.
So much of it, like I don't know how they get around without like, you know, getting it all over.
That's actually a very good clue as to what it is.
Yeah.
Because they're known for losing their homes to their own bathroom habits.
Oh yeah.
That's a polite way of saying they crap themselves out of their own house.
Oh. Who are these guys?
Puffballs, little ones. I use them as applicators to stop bleeding because they create a nice fine dusting for the blood platelets to get a good foothold and coagulate, start scabbing. One, when it fell, it lifted up the earth and created a cradle, a depression. And the root ball rotted away, creating this mound, a pillow. And so we have cradles and we have pillows from where trees used to be, and then completely rotted away. Some 60 years ago, 40 years ago. You can tell by the plant growth growing up and the young sapling. Hey, look, we can tell to the year on this one. Ready? Wait, this year is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. At least 12 years ago. Isn't that cool? Trees are one of the best ways to reintroduce yourself to your landscape. My apprentices have been doing their tree time. Every sit for the last week. Go out. Identify the trees in your area. How many can you not identify? Is there anybody here who knows every species of tree in their sits fund or in your backyard? That's a good question. Because if you know everything about every tree, you pretty much know everything about the universe. Anyway, doesn't mean you know everything it isn't. Yeah, not at all. You've got stories. Maples are supposed to be opposite branching patterns. Which means every time you see an anomaly that is something other than opposite, there's a story. A hurricane, an ice storm, a bored Boy Scout, right? Every curve, every lean, every scar, every stump of a once massive branch. Every whorl in the bark where the branch has been gone for so long that over decades of new rings growing, it's been covered. So your first activity is in tracking a tree. As a group, quietly with your journals. Stand where you need to. You might have to wander around to look. And don't give answers about what happened to this tree, because we can't really. We can only use our best tracking tools like counting growth whorls and understanding how the weather patterns move from west to the ocean. We can only understand so much. Ask questions of the tree. How old are you? Were you the only one in this forest? What happened to remove most of the limbs on that side? Is that an indicator of direction? And if so, which direction? What animal sign or competitive tree sign is damaging or compromising you? What can you tell me about the health of the soil? The questions are going to be never ending. Give yourselves a good 15 minutes of what I call invoking the sacred question. Challenge your logical mind to fill pages in 15 minutes. So fast they'll come that you won't be able to catch up. You know you're surfing in that zone of the sacred question, and your logical mind's your ally with it. and you can't write fast enough. And then after 15 minutes, we'll share. We'll share questions. The repeats, just put a check next to when you hear them on yours, so that you can just repeat the ones that haven't been said yet. Ready? Tree track. Have fun.
The other animals.
They eat a lot.
That appears to be the case to me.
So, I don't want to give it away. I want to see where people are at. And then we'll talk about your tree tracking experience. Yeah. Whoever lived here was in a world that, well, you get the idea. So, if you had to wager a primary culprit and a secondary, what would be your top two guesses? Rabbit, top, second. Okay.
Rabbit or squirrel?
Rabbit or that's one sore, bow-legged squirrel right there. But, you know what? You're not too far off with the group. You said squirrel. Raccoon or rabbit?
Raccoon.
Okay, any second? It's like second place culprits in the lineup. Alright. No pressure.
I'm gonna go straight up rabbit on that one.
Okay.
Porcupine, raccoon, skunk.
In that order. Nice.
Porcupine. I don't. Maybe raccoon.
Okay. You all had good size parameters, right? And rodents. Poop looks like this, and this is what they do. This is the second largest rodent in North America.
Possum?
Oh no, possums aren't rodents.
Oh.
They're marsupials.
The only marsupial in North
Yeah.
America, right?
So, its cousin, the largest rodent in North America's eyes are mounted up here because they live in the water. Yeah, they have to look up. But because they eat the same thing but from different places, this particular culprit's eyes are down here so they can look down because they're always in the trees, and their favorite trees are hemlocks in this region. And they poop themselves out of their dens. They pee on each other for a mating ritual. Don't recommend you try it.
Especially not with this.
Yeah. So, porcupine. Porcupine lives here, or lived here. Sable saw a fisher working this ridge this morning, so.
Didn't put that together.
Hemlock stand, porcupine, red squirrel, usually equal fisher. That's the apex predator for this microenvironment. Blue heron down at the shoreline. Apex predator for that area, eating the frogs that eat the fish. Apex predator here, fisher. And bobcat. So yeah, pretty cool, huh? How did your tree tracking go? Who wants to start?
Still happening.
Nothing? No questions? What's your name? Was it like...
It might have been easier to sort of be able to point to it, but you know, there's questions of why. It seemed like, yeah, geez, I'm not even sure I remember now because I don't have my journal, but it's growing up, you know, and it's shaded out over on this side now, but it almost seems like it's too old for it to have been shaded out on that whole side for that, you know, whole time. And then the last thing I thought was really interesting, there's a couple branches coming out this direction where there's another branch, you know, shooting straight up from wherever what had fallen before. And I don't know that I'd sort of looked so closely at a tree in that way before that it seems to have grown a branch after it had died.
No.
Which seems just amazing.
Very cool. How about you, Kev? What do you got?
Come back to me.
Oh, come back to you? Okay. Sean?
I think that most of the branches are heading south. That would be my guess on that. I don't know if I'm right. I think I am. Maybe.
Pretty solid guess.
And maybe there was a fire at one time. I don't know.
Ah, cool.
Could be the. I tried to see if the other bark just ages that way, but it looks like there might have been a fire.
Nice.
So I was looking at this tree that forks, and I noticed that there was like a branch growing straight up out of the fork. That was interesting. And I was just looking around the tree, so about 2/3 around the circumference, there's very little older growth trees. I don't know if that was a function of sunlight or something fell. And the younger growth trees looked not healthy, like they were either devoid of needles or
The observations. Very cool. Yes.
I didn't make observations. I came up with questions that I didn't
Yes.
know.
What are some of the questions that really light you up? Like, oh, I really want to know this.
I'll just read those. It's not very long. Started with how old are you? How many children have harmed you? What season has damaged you most? Why don't you have lower limbs? When was the coldest winter, the warmest? The hottest summer, the coolest? How have people hurt you? How many times and why? What plants do you have a symbiotic relationship with? Animals? What applications does your bark have? Your leaves, your sap? Does anyone live in you now? Who has?
I kind of a combination of observations and questions. I was wondering what caused the ridges in the lower trunk. Was it man-made, or is that a common feature on those trees? Why are there so many branches that are broken off halfway? Almost all the lower branches looked like that, and there was a lot higher up too. And I was wondering if there was too much snow laying on the branches. What caused the large knot in the lower trunk? Why are the branches towards the ground so wavy? I was wondering what caused the really greatest roots on the back side, and
Very cool.
Why does your base have large pattern bark and your branches have small pattern bark? Why is one side gone? What's the story of the tree next to you? I don't think it was alone at first, but then a little and I think that why your branches fell off.
Very cool. As this tree breathes, these furrows get deeper and more spread out like a balloon. Stretch marks. As the branches search for sunlight, these are solar panels, and they're living solar panels. They're trying to get the sun. So some of the branches have died off on one side that's always shaded on the north side. And when you're in the woods and you can't find the directions, look at the tallest of the trees and see if the branches look heavier on one side than they do on another. And if they look even, then you're looking at it from the north or the south. Circle that tree until you see the distinct change, until it's so stark you can't ignore it. And then here's your compass. The heavy solar panels all facing that southerly exposure to get the sun's rays, those things that couldn't dying off and being self-pruned. You'll see trees in the forest doing this because they're responding to shade finding the way to the sun. The cells contract and expand on their limbs to seek those life-giving rays. It's not an arms race, it's a limbs race. And they each have their own strategies with it. That big matriarch shaded out the ground beneath her for decades. And those that dared to grow in her shade succumbed to not being able to produce more energy than they needed because their solar panels were shaded out. Forest succession happens because trees grow at different rates, and so you have pioneers that come in. They're the eager ones, like that little white pine that I was counting the rings. For the conifers, white pine's one of them. But there are others. There are sumac covering fields almost immediately. Within 7 years, you'll see sumac. 7 to 13 years. And then the popple, which grows. And the balsam fir. We have so much balsam fir because it's a recovering field. A big one. The campus. Wherever you see balsam fir, you know there was timber harvest there. It follows the European interaction methodologies of the landscape, which are changing due to permaculture and some other things. All right, I have an activity for you then, because we tree track with your eyes, but I told you we're going to wean ourselves off eyes and start going into other senses. So if you could get a partner, let's go on a piece of ground that's a little less debris riddled here. Clearing over here. And one bandana. If you don't have a bandana, I have a bunch. Does anyone need one? I have an extra.
Okay. You have one of those on the property?
Oh yeah, they come and go. It's pretty wild. No property lines matter to wild person. I almost picked up a roadkill. Oh, they're there almost every day. Over here. Wild turkeys, bobcat, deer, red squirrel, chipmunk, hermit, leaf eagle, occasional otter, porcupine, flying squirrel, northern and southern, Norway rat, muskrat, snowshoe hare, meadow vole, masked vole, white-footed mouse, deer mouse, gray or house mouse, star-nosed, voice, like an electronic voice. Where was I? Anyway, yeah, I can list you all of the mammals that live on my land. Like, oh, little brown bats, the little myotices. Although they're not as common once we got rid of the shutters. So I'd like to build more bats. Okay. Does everybody have a partner or two when we have odds? Yes, we do, which is okay. Threes are good. Threes are good. What we're going to do is, one of you is going to be a guide. And you may have two guides if you have a group of three, which is fine. But when you're a guide, can I borrow somebody real quick to show? So, my blindfolded person thing. Right, so I'm going to have a wrist, support a wrist, and an elbow, and I'm looking for things like barbed wire or a rock or a root, and I'm communicating with, okay, we're coming up to an incline, so be prepared to step up, and slowly break to the right towards me. There's going to be a little bit of a decline now, maybe a root under your foot like that, you have to step high, and that would be good. Thank you. So you're basically guiding them to a tree, blindfolded, and then stepping back. When you, if you're the blindfolded partner, have a tree, pour your senses into it, right? Like texture, smell, touch it with your cheek. This is more sensitive than these, right? How does it grow into the ground? Are there any blemishes? Can you paint a picture in here with what information is coming through your fingertips as to the texture of the furrows and their width and how they express themselves, like braille? How big around is it? The ICO become a tree hugger. It's really fun, and I won't go with this. Is there a flat spot? Again, that could be navigational, just like that limb tip. Right? Partner up. When you're done, I'll call you all in. If you're a guy, don't come straight back to the very same spot, but don't spin them in circles either. Just kind of meander a little bit back, maybe a little loop-de-loop. So when they take off their blindfold, they have to remember from tactile information where to locate their tree. And then they're going to go find their tree. You don't say anything, facilitator. You just see where they lead you. If after 10 minutes you see visible frustration and sorrow, say, okay, this quadrant right here. Or it's behind you somewhere. Right? So they can lock onto that tactile memory. Now, some of you are going to be brilliant at this because you're hands-on learners. Or some of you, this might be a challenge. Either way, it's really fun. Alright, so have fun with it. Partners and trips. Right?
You have to spin around her while you
Right.
before that. That's before. Makes it easier when my voice
Thanks for coming out, man.
Yeah.
I thought you told me.
It's okay. It's the moss. It's the stuff.
Exactly,
I
yeah.
knew there was moss on the box. How much moss there was?
And you kept feeling that twig that was
Yeah.
coming out on the other. Yeah, and it goes back. That's it.
No, I think I would have.
You would have
It's
gotten
the
it.
only it's the only tree in this general area that has the characteristic.
That's true. That's like that with the moss.
And it also had little things of moss further off the tree.
Yeah.